Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we're going to do the biggest blind tasting challenge ever on my channel. I will be tasting 5 Cabernet Sauvignons from 5 different locations to see which one offers the best value for 50 euros. When I buy wine, I always focus on finding the best value. But for me, value has never been about simply choosing the cheapest option. Because let's be honest, most of the time, if you pay less, you actually get less. Instead, value means finding the best possible quality, pleasure, and experience for the price I am willing to pay. And today, we are putting that to the test. For this tasting, I have set 2 constants: price and grape variety, to evaluate in a blind tasting which winemaking region offers the best value. Of course, we can go completely rogue and just spend the same amount of money in every single winemaking region and see what we get. But I do not think that would be truly fair. Some grape varieties are easier to grow, while others are more finicky and require more attention from a viticulturist or a winemaker. Take Pinot Noir, for example. I never trust cheap Pinot. It is a grape that, if treated badly, will punish you twice as badly. Revenge of the Pinot Noir. But Pinot Noir is a story for another video. Today we are focusing on Cabernet Sauvignon, the world's most planted red wine grape. The challenge here is that it is not always easy to find it as standalone variety. More often than not, it is blended with other grapes, even when the label does not specify it. So for this tasting, I am expecting both 100% Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Sauvignon dominant blends, all priced at around 50 euros or $50. Cabernet is grown all over the world. In fact, it is called an international grape variety, and its best examples can age beautifully. It responds well to oak aging, so at this price point, I expect to see different oak regimes. And despite all of this variation, I do believe that Cabernet Sauvignon can still retain its unique characteristic and the expression of terroir. But before we taste, there's one more thing I wanted to address, something that few of you have pointed out. Usually, I choose the topic for the video and buy the wines myself. And sometimes I already know the wines quite well, which makes blind tasting 1, easier, 2, not as challenging or honest. So this time I decided to spice things up. I handed over the wine selection to my cameraman, meaning I know just as much as you do about what is in these bottles. What I do know is that they all are 100% Cabernet Sauvignon or Cabernet Sauvignon based blends at the price level around 50 euros or $50. And they come from 5 different winemaking countries where this grape is grown: France, Italy, Australia, United States, and Chile. Let's start our tasting. Wine number 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wine number 1. Okay, so wine number 1 on the color is dark ruby. It does show some development. It is not as bluish or violet as you would expect from really young wine. On the nose, you do feel really ripe, beautiful, but kind of tiny strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, but it is all wrapped within these quite expressive spices. You get garrigue, you have rosemary and thyme, some cedar wood, I guess. And it seems really fresh and quite balanced, not too expressive, not screaming out loud, but kind of calm and grown-up wine. Let's taste it. Wow, such an explosion on the palate. The acidity here is really elevated, bright, lively, shining. The fruit was really clean and kind of precise and almost crystalline-like. So I would want to go towards the New World, maybe like Australia or United States. but the acidity and the freshness this wine packs on the palate seems more towards the like old world style, and the acidity actually lifts this wine up and it kind of makes it or creates the body a bit slimmer, maybe lighter, not as full-bodied or textured or rich and opulent as you would sometimes expect from these countries. Tannin is really polished and kind of ripe in style. Lovely wine. And actually the aftertaste here for the wine one is quite long and persistent, and it is not just fruit, it is kind of like spiced and slightly dried cherries, dried dark plums. Really beautiful wine on the palate. I will give this wine 94 points. I love it. While I talk with you, the aftertaste still sits here on my palate. Let's move to wine number 2. Okay, so this one also shows some garnet notes, deeply colored as expected from Cabernet Sauvignon. But on the nose, it is much riper, much darker fruit profile. Here we had a lot of like red fruit. In this wine on the nose, we feel more blue and black fruit profile, more plum, more blackberry, more cassis, actually quite expressive cassis note. And fruit here is more dominant than the spiciness. However, I do feel kind of that toastiness, that toasted nut element, that vanilla link. I said vanilla and it was all that I felt for a second there. Like really sweet, ripe, ultra ripe fruit packed within like vanilla pudding. Let's taste this wine. Here we have some of the warmth from a sunny climate. The alcohol here is kind of telling you that I am coming from a really sunny and shiny climate. On the palate, this wine is really richly flavored, dense, really ripe. And the tannin here as well is elevated, high, but it is really ripe, almost sweet tasting, giving just nice texture to the wine. Still taking all of that information, the wine does not seem flabby or dull. The acidity here is quite fresh and lively. I do like this wine. I think it is completely different in style than wine number 1. It is much more opulent, more full-bodied, broader-shouldered, if you can say that about the wine. So I will give this wine 93 points. And I think this wine, as opposed to wine number 1, this wine is absolutely ready to be drunk right now. It is juicy, it is bursting with fruit, it is perfectly ripe fruit that you take from the bush and just eat right away. So let's move to wine number 3. Okay, this wine seems slightly younger. Here we have that ruby color, but the nose, it is quite complex. You kind of feel here some of those ripe strawberries, raspberries, forest berries. And then you have delicate spicy elements, but they are harmoniously kind of part of that wine. They are not standing alone outside of the wine, kind of protecting fruit or covering the fruit. This wine invites you to spend a bit more time with it and kind of converse with it, you know. I really like the nose here. It is, you would expect from Cabernet Sauvignon to have this really expressive cassis, element, but here you have it, but it is mixed and kind of waved with all other elements. On the nose, it is really complex. I would not say that this wine is really old, maybe 3 years, but 4, maximum 5, but already it is showing quite complex nose. It is something I really like a lot here. Let's taste it. So here for wine number 3, we also have that really elevated, juicy, lively type of acidity, but Opposed to wine number 1, here the acidity is part of the fruit. It seems fruity or fruit driven, as opposed in wine number 1, it felt kind of bursting like a wave out of the wine. I think there's a lot of energy in it, a lot of zestiness in it, a lot of life in it. So it can live for another 10 or 20 years, I would say for sure. There's some of that austerity as well, some of that kind of savoriness in it. But it is absolutely lovely to be drunk right now. It does not give you harsh edges or harsh spikes of acidity or, tannin structure. The tannin here, it is beautifully structured. It is definitely not as ripe as in wine number 1 or wine number 2, but it is absolutely masterfully integrated within the wine. It is part of the wine. I really like this wine. Yes, and that aftertaste, it just stays there. It is so persistent. It sticks to your palate. It is not letting you go. Beautiful, beautiful wine. Right now, it is definitely one of my top wines. I will give this wine 96 points. Let's move to wine number 4. Okay. So this is probably the deepest colored wine. So this is really, it almost gives you stained tears. So there's a lot of extraction there. And there is some of that kind of green spiciness maybe. And by green spiciness, I mean like bay leaf, rosemary, some of those green elements, not necessarily under ripeness of the fruit. This is not what I'm trying to say, but kind of layer of element that gives you extra depth, I guess, to the otherwise black currant driven nose. And it is not screaming power, but it is definitely whispering power. All right, so this wine is tricky. I don't want to be too negative here because it is definitely not a bad wine in any way, but it seems like a perfectly structured square with a kind of empty middle. So we have a lot of that ripe fruit profile and kind of juicy structure, lively acidity, ripe tannins that kind of add extra dimension to the wine. But what I was kind of disappointed here was that the mid palate kind of was rather hollow, I might say. So yeah, it is really interesting. It has the color, it has the structure, it has the nose, it has the acidity, but somehow it is not all made into one perfect, harmonious wine. It just lacks something. I mean, this wine is in no way kind of faulty or bad or badly made at all. And if I would have enjoyed it in isolation, I would completely liked it. But in this case, when it is standing next to all of these other beautiful wines, it just seemed that it is not playing in the same league. So yeah, I will give this wine 89 points. So let's move to wine number 5. Okay, so I do feel some of the fruit here, but I think that this wine is slightly corked. There is this kind of green, wet cardboard element, and it is overpowering the fruit. So I don't think I can really evaluate this wine. And I mean, sometimes these things happen. Sometimes wines are corked, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm really sorry. It is definitely corked. No. Sorry. Unfortunately, I will not score wine number 5. That's kind of a bummer. But I mean, yeah, this is life, I guess. Okay, so we have scored all the 4 wines. And out of these 4, I actually like the wine number 3 the most. So that would be my best value here, because all of these wines cost the same. And wine number 3 really was my favorite. It stood out. It was complex already, beautiful, long-lasting aftertaste. And if I would have to choose which wine to continue tonight, I would definitely go with wine number 3. But there's another challenge that we wanted to address today, and that was where these wines are coming from. So I will give my broad guesses, and then we will reveal the wines. So wine number 1 and wine number 2 actually show that really beautiful, pure, crystalline-like fruit character, which is why I would like to place them outside of Europe, because Europe sometimes gives you that savory, that leathery element. And wine number 1 kind of had that spiciness and elevated, lively, juicy acidity, which is why I wanted to put it in the Australia. And wine number 2, this was quite difficult. I was constantly going between California or Chile, California or Chile, I don't know. So I would want to think that both wines are from outside of Europe. So let's reveal. Okay, wow. This is something I've never seen in our market. So Leeuwin estate from Margaret River, Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is indeed Australia. And Leeuwin estate is something I have never tasted. So this is vintage 2017, but it is one of the kind of first or really well-known estates from Margaret River. And Margaret River is a winemaking region that was created thanks to the science. It was not because historically they were always grapes grown, but people just came together, decided that this region is really perfect for winemaking, and it is. Wine number 2. Okay, so California, that makes sense. Beaulieu Vineyards from Napa Valley, Cabernet Sauvignon in 2019. So this is their entry-level wine. It was really beautiful and ripe, exactly what you would expect from Napa Valley. This is a huge surprise for me, because if I would have guessed before the tasting, I would have said that Napa will probably score the least. That makes me wonder what I left behind. But should we move to the wine number 3 and reveal my favorite one, or should we reveal wine number 4 that I liked the least?
4. Start with 4.
Let's start with 4. Okay, maybe I have to retaste this wine, because I really do like Chateau Pedesclaux. I think they make beautiful wines, and maybe like style-wise it was different here. And 2016 vintage was really perfect in Bordeaux. But it actually fails in this tasting. It should not be in this tasting, because believe it or not, dear cameraman, it is 48% Cabernet Sauvignon. So this wine is not dominant with Cabernet Sauvignon. It is the dominant grape variety of them all, because 45 is Merlot and 4 is Petit Verdot and 3 is Cabernet Franc. So let's reveal wine number 5, the one that was corked, unfortunately. Okay, so this is Miguel Torres, Manso del Velasco or Velasco. Vinas has Cabernet Sauvignon from Curico, actually. And Miguel Torres was one of the first who kind of saw the potential in Chile. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, then he actually settled down and kind of created his own winery in Curico. So this is the original home, and too bad that this wine was corked. And that leaves wine number 3, my favorite wine here on the list, coming from Italy. Okay, Tenuta San Guido. Oh, wow. Is it really kind of Cabernet based? Should I check? Should I check you again? Should I?
I think it's 60% Cabernet.
Okay. And it is 2022 vintage, and I said like 3 or up to 5 years old. It was beautiful. It was really nice. You would just expect that winemaker at this level would make such a beautiful wine. And this is actually second label of Tenuta San Guido Sassicaia. So yeah, absolutely perfect. Great value. Great value. Okay, so a few things to think about. I will probably retaste Chateau Pedesclaux and really kind of think about it, because maybe standing next to all of these kind of bigger and fuller bodied wines, Chateau Pedesclaux felt out of the place and I scored it badly. Sometimes that happens, because I tell you honestly, I've been there, I've tasted some of the wines at their winery, some of the younger wines though, and they were really beautiful in the glass and I really like the freshness there. But okay, absolutely pleasantly surprised by Napa Valley. You know, sometimes we keep saying that Napa Valley wines are so expensive and that you have to spend a lot of money to get really good stuff. And this was standing proudly at the $50 mark next to all of these other wines. And yeah, great. Wow, slightly disappointed about the corked wine, but I mean, it is what it is. Thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments which grape variety or wine style you would like to see me taste in a similar manner as I did with these wines today. Be it Riesling at 25, be it Pinot Noir at 10, or $100 mark, I don't know. World is your oyster. And unfortunately, we had one corked wine. Corked wine is not the only wine fault that could ruin our experience, so make sure to watch my other video about most common wine faults.